The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine courts of the Galactic Sports Complex on Kepler 4-4-B. Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her tennis racket grip, feeling the familiar weight of Earth-forged titanium composite in her hands. Across the net, Ambassador Kel'Thuzad of the Vrex Empire towered nearly 8 feet tall, his forearms moving in perfect synchronization as he practiced his serves. "You understand the terms of this match, human?" Kel'Thuzad's voice carried the characteristic clicking undertones of his species. His translator device rendered his words in crisp English, though the condescension needed no translation. "When I defeat you in this primitive sport, your species will withdraw all territorial claims to the Andromeda approach sectors." Sarah bounced the tennis ball once, twice, feeling its familiar rhythm against the court surface. Around them, representatives from dozens of galactic civilizations filled the stadium seats. The Zephyrian Council had deemed this the most civilized way to resolve the territorial dispute, a simple game between champions rather than the alternative that nobody wanted to consider. "And when I win," Sarah replied calmly, "humanity gets full mining rights to those sectors. Plus, safe passage guarantees for our trade routes." She looked up at the towering alien, noting how his primary arms were easily twice the length of human arms, while his secondary pair could provide stability and power that no human could match. On paper, this should have been no contest. The Vrex had dominated galactic sports for 3 centuries. Their physiology was simply superior, enhanced reflexes, multiple limbs for complex coordination, and a metabolism that could sustain peak performance for hours without fatigue. Tennis, they had declared, was a game of reach, power, and endurance. All areas where they excelled beyond any known species. What they didn't understand about humans, Sarah reflected as she walked to the baseline, was that humans had been playing this game for over 500 years. Not just playing, obsessing over it, analyzing every angle, every spin, every possible tactical advantage. While the Vrex saw tennis as a demonstration of physical superiority, humans had turned it into a science of controlled violence. The referee, a neutral, crystalline entity whose body chimed with each movement, called the match to order. First set, Ambassador Chen to serve. Sarah took her position, feeling the weight of not just human pride, but human survival resting on her shoulders. The Andromeda approach wasn't just valuable territory. It was the only viable route for human expansion. Beyond their current galactic neighborhood, lose this match, and humanity would be trapped in their small corner of space for generations. She had trained for this moment her entire life, though she never could have imagined the stakes. Growing up on Luna Colony, she had started playing tennis in the low-gravity courts, developing a serve that utilized the unique physics of reduced gravity. Later, she had trained on Mars, where the different atmospheric pressure and gravity created entirely new challenges. Every human colony had contributed something to her game, but it wasn't just her individual skill that mattered. Sarah carried with her the collective knowledge of every human tennis player who had ever lived. Earth's greatest coaches had analyzed thousands of hours of Vrex gameplay footage. They had discovered something that the arrogant aliens had missed: a tiny gap in their defensive positioning that occurred exactly 0.3 seconds after their secondary arms completed their backswing. The gap lasted less than 1/10 of a second. No normal being could consistently exploit such a small window. But humans weren't normal. Humans were the species that had spent millennia throwing balls at precise targets, hitting moving objects with sticks, and calculating trajectories in their heads faster than most species could with computers. Sarah tossed the ball high into the alien sky. Her body moved with the fluid precision of countless hours of practice, muscle memory refined by generations of human athletes. The racket came down in a perfect arc, meeting the ball at the exact moment when all vectors aligned. The serve exploded, crossed the net at 127 miles per hour, spinning with a wicked slice that curved the ball's trajectory in a way that seemed to defy physics. Kel'Thuzad's forearms moved in perfect coordination just as his training had taught him. His primary right arm swept across in a powerful backhand motion, while his secondary arms provided balance and preparation for the next shot. for exactly 0.3 seconds. His left side was completely unprotected. The ball struck the court just inside the service line and bounced with a vicious angle that took it directly into that unguarded space. Kel'Thuzad's superior reflexes kicked in immediately, but even his enhanced nervous system couldn't overcome the laws of physics and geometry that humans had spent centuries mastering. 15 love, the crystalline referee announced, its voice ringing like struck metal. A murmur ran through the crowd. In 3 centuries of galactic sports, no one had ever scored a clean ace against a Vrex champion on the first serve. The alien spectators had expected to witness a demonstration of Vrex superiority. Instead, they had just seen something unprecedented. Kel'Thuzad's 4 eyes focused on Sarah with new intensity. Lucky shot, human. Sarah simply nodded and walked back to the baseline. She could feel the eyes of every human representative in the galaxy watching her. More than that, she could feel the weight of human history, every player who had ever perfected their serve on Earth's courts, every coach who had analyzed the perfect placement, every fan who had cheered for impossible victories. The second serve was even faster. This time, Kel'Thuzad was ready for the slice. His secondary arms adjusted his position before Sarah even tossed the ball. But humans had been playing chess, while other species were still learning checkers. Sarah's second serve came straight down the center line with no spin at all, just pure, devastating speed and precision. The ball caught the edge of the service box and rocketed past Kel'Thuzad's outstretched primary arm before his nervous system could fully process its trajectory. The crowd fell completely silent. 30 Love Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Vrex Empire thought they understood tennis. They thought they understood humans. They were about to learn that underestimating humanity was the most dangerous mistake any species could make. In the stands, the human delegation watched with growing excitement. This wasn't just a tennis match anymore. This was humanity announcing to the galaxy that they refused to be dismissed, refused to be contained, and refused to accept that bigger and stronger automatically meant better. Sarah bounced the ball for her third serve. Feeling the rhythm that had become as natural as breathing, around the galaxy, on every human world, people were gathering around screens to watch their champions serve for their future. The third serve came with something the Vrex had never encountered before. Pure human stubbornness wrapped in technological precision. Sarah had spent 3 years training with Earth's quantum physics specialists, learning to calculate ball trajectory not just through normal space, but accounting for the minute gravitational variations of Kepler-4 for 2Bs, 3 moons. Kel'Thuzad positioned all 4 arms defensively, his enhanced reflexes primed for any direction. What he couldn't prepare for was the way Sarah's serve seemed to curve impossibly through the air, following a path that looked wrong to every alien eye in the stadium. The ball appeared to be heading straight for his primary backhand position, then suddenly dipped and accelerated, striking the court at an angle that sent it bouncing directly between his secondary arms. 40 Love. The silence in the stadium was deafening. Representatives from the Zephyrian Council leaned forward in their seats, their crystalline bodies refracting light in patterns that indicated extreme confusion. The Thrakkery delegation's tentacles writhed with agitation. Even the usually emotionless synthetic collective seemed to be processing this data with unusual intensity. Admiral Voss of the Terran fleet watched from the VIP section, his weathered face showing no emotion. Inside, however, his heart was pounding with a mixture of pride and terror. If Sarah lost this match, humanity would be effectively caged in their current territory for the next century. If she won, they would gain access to resources and space lanes that could transform human civilization overnight. But there was something else at stake that only a few humans understood. This match wasn't just about territory or resources, it was about respect. For 200 years, humanity had been treated as the galaxy's newest and weakest member. Too small, too fragile, too short-lived to matter in the grand scheme of galactic politics. Every other species measured worth in terms of raw physical capability, technological superiority, or psychic power. They had never encountered a species that measured worth in terms of pure, bloody-minded determination. Sarah's fourth serve was different again. She had learned long ago that predictability was death in tennis. This serve came with topspin that made the ball dive sharply after clearing the net, bouncing high and fast toward Kel'Thuzad's upper torso. The Rex champion finally managed to get a racket on the ball, but his return was weak and high. Sarah moved to the net with the fluid grace of a predator. Her volley was crisp and angled, sending the ball cross-court to a spot that Kel'Thuzad's forearm simply couldn't reach in time. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the ball bounced twice before the Rex champion could retrieve it. Game 2 Chen. Chen leads 1-2-0 in the human section of the stadium. Restraint finally broke. Cheers erupted from the small delegation of Earth's representatives, their voices carrying across the massive arena. It was the first time in galactic sports history that humans had taken a game from a Rex champion, Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins. Earth's leading sports psychologist gripped her seat as she watched Sarah prepare for the next game. She had spent months preparing Sarah's mental game, teaching her techniques developed by human athletes over centuries of competition. The Rex trained their bodies to perfection, but they had never learned what humans knew instinctively, that the mind was the most important muscle in any sport. Kel'Thuzad took his position to serve, his forearms moving through a complex warm-up routine that would have been impossible for any two-armed species. His first serve came like a cannonball minus 140 miles per hour of pure power aimed directly at Sarah's backhand corner. Sarah was already moving before the ball left his racket. Human pattern recognition, honed by millions of years of hunting and survival, had identified the subtle shift in Kel'Thuzad's stance that telegraphed his serve direction. She reached the ball with time to spare and returned it with interest. A passing shot down the line that caught the Rex champion completely off guard. Love 15. The alien crowd stirred uneasily. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Rex were the acknowledged masters of galactic tennis. Their longer reach, superior strength, and multiple limbs gave them advantages that seemed insurmountable. Yet this small human was not just competing, she was dominating. What they didn't understand was that humans had been the underdog in every competition since the day they left Earth. They had learned to turn disadvantages into weapons, weaknesses into strengths. Where the Verks saw Sarah's short stature as a limitation, she saw a lower center of gravity and quicker directional changes. Where they saw her two arms as inferior to their four, she saw streamlined efficiency and devastating focus. Kel'Thuzad's second serve was more cautious, aimed for the center of the service box with less power but better placement. Sarah's return was equally measured, a deep cross-court shot that forced the Verks champion to stretch his primary arms to their limit. The rally that followed was a masterpiece of controlled aggression. Kel'Thuzad used his forearms to their full advantage, setting up shots with his secondary limbs while striking with his primaries. But Sarah had trained for this exact scenario. Every shot she hit was designed to force him into positions where his extra limbs became a hindrance rather than a help. She kept the ball low and angled, making him bend and stretch in ways that threw off his natural coordination. The rally lasted 37 shots. By the end, Kel'Thuzad was breathing heavily, his metabolism finally showing signs of strain. Sarah looked like she could play for another 3 hours without breaking a sweat, when she finally ended the point with a drop shot that barely cleared the net. The Rex champions dived to reach it, fell short by inches. Love 30 in the broadcasting booth. Zikdar, the wise, the galaxy's most respected sports commentator, struggled to find words for what he was witnessing. His 300-year career had never prepared him for anything like this. The human was playing a game that looked like tennis, but followed rules that seemed to exist only in her mind. Admiral, Boss allowed himself a small smile. He had seen this before, in the battles for Mars, in the siege of Europa Station, in a dozen conflicts where human forces had been outnumbered and outgunned. Humans didn't win by being stronger or faster or more advanced. They won by being more clever, more adaptable, more absolutely ruthless in their refusal to accept defeat. Sarah's movement around the court was poetry in motion, each step calculated for maximum efficiency. She had studied the footwork of human tennis legends from Federer to Williams, from Djokovic to Chen Weilin, incorporating centuries of human athletic evolution into her own style. Every step served multiple purposes: positioning for the current shot, preparation for the next one, and psychological warfare against her opponent. Kel'Thuzad served again, this time with desperate power that sent the ball screaming across the net at nearly 150 miles per hour. Sarah's return was impossible. A backhand passing shot hit while moving at full speed that curved around the net post and landed just inside the baseline. The crowd erupted in shocked applause. Even the alien spectators couldn't help but admire the sheer audacity of the shot Love 40. Sarah walked to the receiving position, her expression calm and focused. Around her, the greatest minds in the galaxy were beginning to understand that they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just an upset victory in a sporting event. This was humanity announcing to the universe that they refused to know their place. The moment Kel'Thuzad's fourth serve left his racket, Sarah knew she had him. Not because the serve was weak, it still came at her with the devastating power that had made the Orcs champions of galactic tennis for 3 centuries. But because she could see something in his stance, in the way his secondary arms trembled slightly, that told her everything she needed to know. He was afraid. The ball came straight down the middle with vicious topspin. Exactly the kind of power serve that had dominated lesser opponents for decades. Sarah stepped into it with the confidence of a species that had learned to hunt woolly mammoths with pointed sticks. Her return was a thing of beauty, a sharp-angled cross-court winner that painted the sideline with surgical precision. Game 2. Chen leads to games 2-0. The human delegation had given up all pretense of diplomatic restraint. They were on their feet, cheering with the wild enthusiasm of a species that had spent 2 centuries being told they didn't belong at the big table. Ambassador Martinez wiped tears from his eyes, knowing that every human world was watching this moment. But Sarah barely acknowledged the cheers. She had entered what human athletes called the zone, that mystical state where conscious thought disappeared and pure instinct took over. Every movement flowed with liquid precision, every decision made in microseconds with the certainty of mathematical law. Dr. Hawkins recognized the signs, felt a chill of anticipation. She had seen this state in human champions throughout history, the moment when an athlete transcended normal human limitations and touched something primal and terrifying. The Orcs had no idea what they were facing. Kel'Thuzad attempted to regroup during the changeover, his forearms performing stretching exercises while his mind processed what was happening. In 300 years of galactic competition, no Orcs champion had ever lost the first 2 games of a match. His coaches had prepared him for power, for endurance, for complex tactical situations. They had not prepared him for this. Sarah's first serve of the 3rd game was a masterpiece of controlled violence. It came at 128 miles per hour with a spin that made the ball curve like a guided missile, targeting the exact spot where Kel'Thuzad's defensive positioning was weakest. The Orcs champion managed to get a racket on it, but his return floated high and vulnerable. Sarah's overhead smash was devastating. She channeled every hour of training, every generation of human athletic evolution into that single moment. The ball came down like a meteor, striking the court with such force that it bounced nearly to the stadium ceiling before Kel'Thuzad could even begin to react. 15 Love, in the VIP section. Chancellor Morden of the Zephyrian Council leaned forward with interest. The ancient being had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations, but this was something new. The human female wasn't just winning through superior technique or physical ability. She was winning through something the Zephyrians had rarely encountered: pure willpower made manifest. The second serve was even more devastating. Sarah had discovered that humans possessed something no other galactic species had developed: the ability to hit a tennis ball with controlled fury. Centuries of human warfare, competition, and survival had created a unique neurological pathway that allowed them to channel aggression into precise physical actions. The serve exploded off her racket with a violence that seemed to surprise even Sarah herself. It curved through the air like a weapon seeking its target, struck the service line with mathematical precision, and rocketed past. Kel'Thuzad's desperate lunge at impossible angles. 30 Love, the alien crowd had fallen into stunned silence. This wasn't how galactic sports were supposed to work. The Vreks were supposed to dominate through superior physiology. The smaller, weaker species were supposed to accept their limitations gracefully. Nobody had told the humans that they were supposed to lose. Admiral Voss watched with the calm satisfaction of a commander, who had seen his battle plans come to fruition. The Terran fleet had spent decades analyzing alien psychology, learning how different species approached conflict and competition. The Vreks, like most galactic civilizations, played not to lose. They focused on avoiding mistakes, maintaining advantages, protecting leads. Humans played to win. Sarah's third serve came with a new variation, a slice serve that curved away from Kel'Thuzad's primary backhand and forced him to attempt a return with his secondary arms. The awkward positioning threw off his timing, and his return sailed long by several feet. 40-Love. Double quotes. Dr. Hawkins made notes on her tablet, documenting something that sports psychologists had theorized about, but never seen demonstrated at this level. Sarah had entered what they called flow state, plus not just the normal athletic zone where performance peaked, but something uniquely human where competitive fury and analytical precision merged into a single devastating force. The fourth serve was the coup de grace. Sarah had been saving her fastest serve for exactly this moment. When her opponent was demoralized and her own confidence was at its peak, the ball left her racket at 135 miles per hour with a combination of power and placement that represented the pinnacle of human tennis evolution. Kel'Thuzad didn't even attempt to return it. His forearms remained at his sides as the ball blazed past him and struck the back wall of the stadium with the sound of controlled thunder. Game 2. Chen leads 3-0. The silence in the stadium was complete now. Even the human delegation had stopped cheering, awed by the perfection of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just victory. This was domination at a level that redefined what was possible in the broadcasting booth. Ziktar the Wise finally found his voice. In 300 years of covering galactic sports, he announced to billions of viewers across the galaxy, "I have never witnessed anything approaching this level of precision and power. The human is not simply playing tennis. She is rewriting the fundamental laws of the game." Kel'Thuzad walked to the baseline for his serve, his confidence visibly shattered. The Vreks had built their entire galactic reputation on physical superiority, on the simple equation that bigger and stronger meant better. Sarah Chen was teaching them that mathematics could be more complex than they had imagined. His first serve was tentative, barely reaching 120 miles per hour. Sarah's return was clinical, a backhand winner, down the line that caught the corner of the court with millimeter precision. Love 15. The second serve was worse. Kel'Thuzad was overthinking every movement, his forearms no longer working in harmony but interfering with each other. Sarah's return was almost casual, a forehand that sent the ball exactly where the Vreks champion could not reach it. Double quotes. Love dash. Double quotes. By the third serve, panic had set in. Kel'Thuzad double faulted, his second serve sailing into the net with the desperation of a being who had suddenly discovered that everything he believed about the universe was wrong. Love dash 40. Double quotes. Sarah stood at the baseline, bouncing lightly on her toes as she prepared to receive what might be the final serve of the game. Around the galaxy, on every human world, people held their breath. This was more than tennis now. This was their species proving that they belonged among the stars. Kel'Thuzad's final serve of the fourth game came with the desperation of a drowning man reaching for driftwood. At 115 miles per hour, it was the weakest serve he had hit in years of professional competition. Sarah's return was almost contemptuous in its ease. A forehand passing shot that curved around his outstretched primary arm and landed just inside the baseline. Game 2. Chen leads 4-0. The scoreboard flickered with alien symbols that all conveyed the same impossible message. A human was not just competing with a Vreks champion. She was destroying him. In the stands, representatives from dozens of civilizations sat in stunned silence, their fundamental understanding of the galactic order cracking like glass under pressure. Ambassador? Chen walked to her chair during the changeover, her face a mask of professional calm. Inside, her heart was singing with the fierce joy that only humans seem to understand, the euphoria of achieving something that everyone said was impossible. But she couldn't celebrate yet. Tennis matches were won in sets, not games. And she knew that wounded predators were often the most dangerous. Dr. Hawkins scribbled furious notes, documenting what might be the most important psychological study in human history. Sarah wasn't just winning through superior technique or training. She was demonstrating something that human. Researchers had long suspected but never proven that humans possessed a unique neurological advantage when it came to competitive pressure. While other species excelled in specific areas. Vrek's strength, Zephyrian analytical ability, Thrakri psychic coordination, humans were the only known species that actually improved under extreme stress. Their performance didn't just maintain under pressure. It elevated to superhuman levels. The fifth game began with Sarah's serve, and she had clearly decided that mercy was not a human virtue. Her first serve came at 132 miles per hour with a slice that curved the ball's trajectory in 3 dimensions. Kel'Thuzad's forearms moved in perfect coordination, just as his training demanded. But the ball seemed to exist in spaces that his limbs simply couldn't reach. 15 love. Admiral. Voss leaned back in his seat, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. The Terran fleet's strategic planners had spent years developing this moment, not through military might or technological superiority, but through pure human stubbornness. They had identified tennis as the perfect arena to demonstrate human capabilities because it required every advantage that made their species. Unique precision timing, spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, adaptive strategy, and most importantly, the ability to channel aggression into controlled, devastating action. The second serve was a thing of mathematical beauty. Sarah had calculated the exact angle needed to exploit a flaw in Vrek's physiology that their own coaches had never noticed. Their forearms, for all their advantages, created blind spots in their peripheral vision. The ball came at Kel'Thuzad from an angle that his enhanced reflexes couldn't track, striking the court and bouncing past his desperate lunge. 30 love. In the broadcasting booth, Ziktar the Wise struggled to explain what he was witnessing to his galactic audience. The human appears to be playing a completely different game, he announced, his usually confident voice tinged with confusion. Every serve, every return is calculated with a precision. That suggests she can see patterns that remain invisible to the rest of us. The third serve came with pure power. 138 miles per hour of concentrated human determination. But it was the placement that made it devastating. Sarah had identified the exact spot on the court where Kel'Thuzad's forearms would interfere with each other rather than work in coordination. The ball struck that spot with laser precision and ricocheted at an angle that defied the Vrek's champion's attempt at defense. 40 love, the crowd was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just an upset victory, but a complete redefinition of what was possible. The human wasn't winning by accident or luck. She was winning because she understood the game at a level that transcended normal competition. Sarah's fourth serve was the culmination of centuries of human tennis evolution. It combined power, placement, and spin in proportions that created something new, a shot that seemed to curve through space-time itself. Kel'Thuzad's four eyes tracked the ball's flight path with desperate intensity, but his body simply couldn't respond fast enough to intercept. It gamed to Chen. Chen leads 5-0. The silence in the stadium was now absolute. Even the human delegation had stopped cheering, awed by the clinical perfection of Sarah's performance. This wasn't just tennis anymore. This was a demonstration of human capabilities. That was rewriting galactic understanding of what their species could achieve. Chancellor Morden, of the Zephyrian Council, activated his private communication device. Alert the Strategic Assessment Division, he transmitted to his homeworld. we may need to completely revise our evaluations of human capabilities. What we are witnessing here suggests that our previous analyses were dangerously incomplete. Kel'Thuzad prepared to serve the sixth game, his forearms trembling slightly with fatigue and psychological pressure. For the first time in his professional career, he was experiencing something that no VX athlete had ever trained for: the crushing weight of imminent defeat at the hands of what his species considered an inferior opponent. His first serve was pathetic by Rex standards, barely 110 miles per hour, with no spin or strategic placement. Sarah's return was a textbook example of human tennis perfection. A cross-court winner that painted the sideline with millimeter precision. Love 15. The second serve was worse. Kel'Thuzad was no longer playing tennis. He was simply going through the motions while his mind tried to process the impossible reality of his situation. Sarah's return was almost casual, a drop shot that barely cleared the net and died on the court surface before the Vrex champion could reach it. Love-30. Double quotes. Dr. Hawkins documented every detail, knowing that future generations of human athletes would study this match as the moment their species announced its arrival on the galactic stage. Sarah wasn't just winning. She was winning with a style and precision that demonstrated every advantage that made humans unique in the galaxy. The third serve was Kel'Thuzad's attempt to salvage some dignity. He put everything he had into a power serve that reached 140 miles per hour, aimed directly at Sarah's backhand corner. For a moment, it looked like he might finally win a point through pure force. Sarah's backhand return came off her racket like a guided missile. The ball curved through the air with impossible precision, struck the baseline with mathematical accuracy, and bounced past Kel'Thuzad's desperate dive at a velocity that seemed to increase rather than decrease after impact. Love 40. Match point. The words echoed through the stadium like a death sentence. In 3 centuries of galactic sports, no one had ever taken a set from a Vrex champion 6-0. Sarah Chen was 1 point away from achieving something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. Kel'Thuzad stood at the baseline, his forearms hanging at his sides as he contemplated the serve that would determine not just his fate, but the future of Rex prestige throughout the known galaxy. Around him, billions of beings across dozens of worlds held their breath, waiting to see if the impossible was about to become reality. The final serve of the first set came with all the desperation and fury that Kel'Thuzad could summon. His forearms moved in perfect synchronization, channeling 3 centuries of Vrex athletic dominance into one last desperate attempt to avoid the unthinkable. The ball exploded from his racket at 145 miles per hour, the fastest serve he had ever hit in competition. Sarah's return was instantaneous and devastating. She had been waiting for exactly this moment, when her opponent would abandon strategy for pure power. Her backhand met the ball at the perfect angle, redirecting its energy with the precision of a master physicist. The return shot came off her racket at nearly the same speed as the serve, but with deadly placement that sent it screaming down the line. Kel'Thuzad's dive was magnificent, a full extension effort that would have been impossible for any 2-armed species. His primary right arm stretched to its absolute limit, while his secondary arms provided stability and balance. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually reach the ball. He missed by 3 inches. The ball struck the baseline and bounced high into the stadium seating, where it was caught by a young human spectator who clutched it like a holy relic. The silence that followed was so complete that the only sound was the gentle hum of the stadium's atmospheric processors. Game and first set to Chen, 6-0. The scoreboard blazed with impossible numbers that sent shockwaves throughout the galactic community. In the human section, Ambassador Martinez buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed by emotions he couldn't name. Around the galaxy, on every human world, people danced in the streets while their governments frantically recalculated their strategic positions. Dr. Hawkins sat frozen in her seat, her tablet forgotten as she processed what she had just witnessed. This wasn't just victory. This was a demonstration of human capability that would fundamentally alter how their species was perceived throughout the galaxy. The implications were staggering. Sarah walked to her chair with the calm confidence of a predator who had just proven her dominance. She toweled off methodically, her face showing no emotion despite having just achieved the impossible. But inside, she felt the fierce satisfaction that only humans seem to understand. The joy of proving everyone wrong through sheer determination and skill. The 10-minute break between sets gave the galaxy time to absorb what had happened. In the broadcasting booth, Ziktar the Wise struggled to find words for his audience. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," he announced, his voice carrying across dozens of worlds, "we have just witnessed something that will be remembered for millennia. A human has defeated a Vrex champion 6-0 in the first set of what may be the most important sporting event in galactic history." Admiral Voss used the break to send coded messages to Terran Command. The victory was already exceeding their most optimistic projections. Win or lose from this point, humanity had just announced to the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with. But he knew Sarah wasn't finished. Humans didn't just want to compete, they wanted to dominate. Kel'Thuzad sat in his chair, his forearms hanging loosely as his coaches surrounded him with desperate advice. The Vrex champion was experiencing something no member of his species had ever encountered in athletic competition. Complete psychological breakdown. Everything he had been taught about Vrex superiority, about the natural order of the galaxy, had just been destroyed by a small human female with a tennis racket. "You must regroup," his primary coach insisted, his clicking voice carrying undertones of panic. "She cannot maintain this level of performance. No being in the galaxy can sustain such precision under pressure." But Kel'Thuzad knew better. He had looked into Sarah's eyes during the changeovers and seen something that chilled him to his core. The human wasn't playing at her maximum level. She was playing within herself, holding reserves of ability that she hadn't even needed to tap. The second set began with Sarah's serve, and she immediately demonstrated that the first set had been nothing more than warm-up. Her first serve came at 140 miles per hour with a spin that made the ball curve through dimensions that Vrex physics couldn't explain. Kel'Thuzad's return attempt wasn't even close. 15-love, the crowd stirred uneasily as they realized that Sarah's dominance was not a fluke or temporary surge of performance. This was her baseline level of play, and it was beyond anything the galactic sporting community had ever witnessed. The second serve was a masterpiece of controlled aggression. Sarah had discovered something about human physiology that their own scientists were only beginning to understand. Under extreme competitive pressure, human neural pathways didn't just maintain their efficiency, they actually improved, creating superhuman levels of coordination and precision. The ball came off her racket like a guided weapon, curving through space with mathematical precision to strike the exact center of the service line. It bounced with vicious topspin that sent it rocketing toward Kel'Thuzad's backhand at an angle that defied his forearmed defensive positioning. His return sailed long by several feet. 30-love. In the VIP section, representatives from the Galactic Trade Consortium were frantically updating their economic models. If humans could demonstrate this level of capability in athletics, what did that mean for their potential in technology, warfare, or exploration? The territorial concessions at stake in this match were suddenly looking like the bargain of the millennium. Sarah's third serve introduced a new element of terror into the equation. She had been studying Vrex psychology during the break, analyzing the subtle changes in Kel'Thuzad's stance and breathing patterns. Humans were perhaps the galaxy's greatest experts at reading body language and emotional state skills developed through millions of years of social evolution. She knew exactly where Kel'Thuzad expected the serve to go, and she sent it everywhere else. The ball came at him with 135 miles per hour of pure human determination, curving away from his primary defensive position and forcing him into an awkward stretch that threw off his natural coordination. His return was weak and high, exactly what Sarah had been waiting for. Her overhead smash was devastating. She channeled every hour of training, every generation of human athletic evolution into that single moment. The ball came down like divine judgment, striking the court with such force that it bounced, nearly to the stadium roof before, embedding itself in the back wall. 40 love. The alien spectators were beginning to understand that they were witnessing something beyond sport. This was a demonstration of human capabilities that challenged every assumption about their species. Place in the galactic hierarchy, the small, fragile beings from the third planet of an unremarkable star system were rewriting the laws of physics through pure willpower. The fourth serve was the coup de grace of the game. Sarah had saved her most devastating weapon for last, a serve that combined every advantage that made humans unique in the galaxy. Power from their explosive muscle fibers, precision from their unmatched hand-eye coordination, strategy from their pattern recognition abilities, and most importantly, the sheer bloody-minded refusal to accept defeat that had carried their species. From caves to the stars, the ball left her racket at 142 miles per hour, with spin that made it curve through 3 dimensions simultaneously. Kel'Thuzad's 4 eyes tracked its flight path with desperate intensity, his enhanced reflexes calculating intercept vectors with superhuman speed. But the ball seemed to exist in spaces that his coordination simply couldn't reach. It struck the service line with surgical precision and bounced at an impossible angle, painting the sideline before ricocheting into the stands, where it was caught by a crystalline being whose body chimed with what could only be described as amazement. Game. To Chen. Chen leads 1-0 in the second set. The scoreboard update sent ripples of shock throughout the galactic community. This wasn't just an upset anymore. This was a complete redefinition of what was possible. The human wasn't just competing with galactic champions. She was making them look like amateurs. Dr. Hawkins finally managed to activate her recording device, knowing that future generations would need to study every moment of this historic performance. Sarah wasn't just playing tennis. She was demonstrating. Humans possessed capabilities that no other species had even suspected. Kel'Thuzad walked to the baseline for his serve, his confidence completely shattered. The Vrex champion who had dominated galactic sports for a decade was experiencing something that no member of his species had ever endured, the crushing realization that everything they believed about their own superiority was a lie. His first serve was tentative, barely reaching 115 miles per hour. Sarah's return was clinical in its precision, a backhand winner that split the court with millimeter accuracy. The ball seemed to accelerate after leaving her racket, striking the baseline and bouncing away before Kel'Thuzad could even begin his defensive movement. Love 15. The second serve was worse. The Vrex champion was overthinking every motion, its forearms no longer working in the perfect coordination that had made him famous. Sarah's return was almost casual, a forehand that sent the ball exactly where her opponent's superior reach became a liability rather than an advantage. Love 30. Kel'Thuzad's final serve of the second game came with the last vestiges of Vrex pride. He summoned every technique his coaches had ever taught him, every advantage his species claimed over the smaller beings of the galaxy. The serve reached 143 miles per hour, the fastest of his career. Aimed with surgical precision at the corner where human limitations should have made a return impossible, Sarah's response was poetry written in motion and mathematics. She had entered a state that human athletes called the zone. But this was something beyond normal peak performance. This was evolution in action. Millions of years of human survival instincts channeled into a single moment of perfect execution. Her backhand return came off the racket at impossible angles, the ball curving through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. It struck the baseline with millimeter precision and bounced away at a trajectory that Kel'Thuzad's enhanced reflexes couldn't track, let alone intercept. Game to Chen. Chen leads 2-0 in the second set. The silence in the stadium was deafening. Representatives from dozens of galactic civilizations sat in stunned disbelief, watching their fundamental understanding of the universe collapse under the weight of human determination. This wasn't supposed to be possible. The Vrex were the acknowledged masters of galactic athletics. Their physiology was superior in every measurable way. What they hadn't measured was the human capacity for transcendence under pressure. Dr. Hawkins scribbled frantic notes, documenting what might be the most important anthropological study in galactic history. Sarah wasn't just winning through superior technique or training. She was demonstrating something that human researchers had theorized but never proven, that their species possessed a unique neurological response to extreme competition that actually improved performance beyond normal biological limits. The third game began with Sarah's serve, and she had clearly decided that mercy was not a human virtue. Her first serve came at 144 miles per hour, the fastest she had hit all day, with a spin that made the ball curve through dimensions that Vrex physics couldn't explain. The placement was surgical, aimed at the exact spot where Suzad's forearmed coordination would work against him rather than for him. The Vrex champion's return attempt wasn't even close. His racket cut through empty air as the ball blazed past him and struck the back wall with the sound of controlled thunder. 15 love. In the broadcasting booth, Ziktar the Wise had abandoned all pretense of professional objectivity. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," he announced to his galactic audience, his voice carrying undertones of awe that transcended species barriers. "We are witnessing the emergence of a new force in galactic civilization. The humans are not just competing, they are redefining what competition means." The second serve was even more devastating. Sarah had discovered something about human physiology that their own scientists were only beginning to understand. Under extreme competitive pressure, human muscle memory didn't just maintain its efficiency, it improved, creating levels of precision that approached the supernatural. The ball came off her racket like a weapon forged in the fires of human determination. It curved through space with mathematical beauty, striking the service line with atomic precision before bouncing at angles that seemed to violate the basic laws of momentum and trajectory. Kel'Thuzad's attempt at a return was pathetic by comparison. His forearms moved in perfect coordination, just as his training demanded. But the ball existed in spaces that his superior reach simply couldn't. Axis 30 love. Admiral Voss leaned forward in his seat, recognizing the moment when strategic planning transformed into historical inevitability. The Terran fleet's analysts had predicted that humans might be competitive in galactic sports. But this was beyond their most optimistic projections. Sarah wasn't just winning, she was demonstrating capabilities that would force every galactic civilization to reassess their understanding of human potential. The third serve introduced a new element of psychological warfare. Sarah had been studying alien body language and behavioral patterns since childhood, developing an intuitive understanding of how different species responded to pressure. She could read Kel'Thuzad's micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in his stance that betrayed his growing desperation. The serve came at him with 141 miles per hour of pure human stubbornness, placed with the precision of a species that had spent millennia throwing rocks at moving targets. But it was the psychological impact that was truly devastating. Kel'Thuzad could see the ball coming, could calculate its trajectory with superhuman accuracy, but his coordination had been shattered by the relentless perfection of Sarah's performance. His return sailed into the net, barely clearing his own racket. 40 love, the crowd was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just an athletic performance, but a demonstration of human capabilities that challenged every assumption about their species' place in the cosmic order. The territorial concessions at stake in this match were beginning to look like the bargain of the millennium. Sarah's fourth serve was the culmination of everything that made humans unique in the galaxy. It combined the explosive power of muscles evolved for persistence hunting, the precision of nervous systems designed for tool use, and the strategic thinking of brains that had conquered an entire planet through pure intelligence. The ball left her racket at 145 miles per hour, with spin that created its own gravitational effects. It curved through space like a comet, seeking its destiny, struck the service line with the precision of orbital mechanics, and bounced away at velocities that seemed to increase rather than decrease with each contact. Kel'Thuzad didn't even attempt a return. His forearms remained at his sides as he watched the impossible shot paint the sideline and disappear into the stands. For the first time in his career, he was experiencing something that no Vrex athlete had ever encountered: complete psychological surrender. Game. Chen leads 3-0 in the second set. The scoreboard updates sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Sarah Chen was now just 3 games away from completing something that would rewrite the balance of power among the stars. The Andromeda approach sectors were no longer the primary prize. This match was about proving that humanity deserved recognition. It's a major galactic power. In the human section of the stadium, the delegation had given up all pretense of diplomatic restraint. They were on their feet, cheering with the wild enthusiasm of a species that had spent 2 centuries being underestimated by their galactic neighbors. Ambassador Martinez wiped tears from his eyes, knowing that every human world was watching their champion redefine what was possible. Kel'Thuzad walked to the baseline for the 4th game, his confidence completely destroyed. The Vrex champion, who had dominated galactic tennis for a decade, was learning what it meant to face an opponent who refused to acknowledge the concept of defeat. His first serve was tentative, barely reaching 112 miles per hour, pathetic by the standards that had made him famous. Sarah's return was clinical in its perfection. She stepped into the shot with the confidence of a predator, redirecting the ball's energy with surgical precision. Her forehand came off the racket like a guided missile, striking the opposite corner of the court with millimeter accuracy. Love 15. The second serve was worse. Kel'Thuzad was overthinking every movement, his superior physiology becoming a liability as his forearms interfered with each other rather than working in coordination. Sarah's return was almost casual, a backhand drop shot that barely cleared the net and died on the court surface before the Vrex champion could reach. It love-30. Dr. Hawkins documented every detail, knowing that future generations of human athletes would study this match as the moment their species announced its arrival on the galactic stage. Sarah wasn't just playing tennis, she was conducting a masterclass in human excellence that would inspire their civilization for centuries too. Come. The third serve was Kel'Thuzad's final attempt to salvage some dignity from the wreckage of his career. He channeled everything he had into a power serve that reached 139 miles per hour, aimed with desperate precision at Sarah's backhand corner. The return was instantaneous and devastating. Sarah's backhand came off her racket like divine judgment, the ball curving through space with impossible precision to strike the baseline, bounce away at angles that defied physics. Love 40. Match point. The words match point echoed through the galactic sports complex like a death sentence for the old order. Across dozens of worlds, billions of beings held their breath as they processed the impossible reality unfolding before them. A human was 1 point away from defeating a Vrex champion in straight sets, achieving something that would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Kel'Thuzad stood at the baseline, his forearms trembling with exhaustion and psychological trauma. The Vrex champion, who had dominated galactic tennis for a decade, was experiencing something no member of his species had ever encountered: the complete collapse of everything they believed about their own superiority. Sarah bounced lightly on her toes at the receiving position, her face a mask of calm concentration. But inside, she felt the fierce joy that only humans seem to understand, the euphoria of proving everyone wrong through sheer determination and skill. Around her, the greatest minds in the galaxy were learning what it meant to underestimate humanity. The serve came with all the desperation and fury that Kel'Thuzad could summon. His forearms moved in perfect synchronization, channeling 3 centuries of Vrex athletic dominance into one final, desperate attempt to avoid the unthinkable. The ball exploded from his racket at 147 miles per hour, the fastest serve of his career, aimed with surgical precision at the corner where human limitations should have made a return impossible. 4. A moment that lasted an eternity. The ball hung in the air like a comet, carrying the hopes and fears of entire civilizations. In the stands, representatives from dozens of species leaned forward, their alien hearts pounding with anticipation. The Zephyrian Council calculated probabilities in real time. The Thrakari delegation's tentacles writhed with nervous energy. Even the emotionless synthetic collective seemed to process This moment, with unusual intensity, Sarah's return, was instantaneous and perfect. She had been waiting for exactly this moment, when her opponent would abandon strategy for pure desperation. Her backhand met the ball at the optimal angle, redirecting its energy with the precision of a master physicist in the fury of a species that had clawed its way to the stars through pure stubbornness. The return shot came off her racket at nearly the same speed as the serve, but with deadly placement that sent it screaming down the line like a missile seeking its target. The ball curved through space with mathematical beauty, its trajectory calculated with the precision that only humans seemed capable of achieving under extreme pressure. Kel'Thuzad's dive was magnificent, a full extension effort that showcased every advantage his species claimed over the smaller beings of the galaxy. His forearms stretched to their absolute limits, his enhanced physiology pushing beyond normal parameters in a desperate attempt to reach the unreachable. He missed by 2 inches. The ball struck the baseline with atomic precision and bounced high into the stadium seating, where it was caught by Admiral Voss himself. The old soldier clutched the ball like a trophy, knowing that this small sphere of rubber and felt had just changed the course of galactic history. The silence that followed was so complete that it seemed to absorb sound itself. For 10 full seconds, the only noise in the stadium came from the gentle hum of life support systems and the distant rumble of spacecraft in orbit above. Then, the human delegation exploded into cheers that could be heard on the other side of the planet. Game, set, and match to Chen. Chen defeats Kel'Thuzad 6-0. 6-0. The scoreboard blazed with numbers that sent shockwaves throughout the galactic community. Sarah Chen had not just defeated a Vrex champion, she had dominated him so completely that he had failed to win a single game in the entire match. It was a performance that redefined what was possible and announced to the galaxy that humanity would no longer accept second class status. Sarah walked to the net with the calm dignity of a champion, extending her hand to Kel'Thuzad in the traditional gesture of sportsmanship. The Vrex champion looked at her with something approaching awe, his 4 eyes reflecting a new understanding of what humans were capable of achieving. "Your species," he said quietly, his translator rendering his words in perfect English, "is more dangerous than we ever imagined." Sarah smiled, not with cruelty, but with the satisfaction of a job well done. "We prefer to think of ourselves as determined," she replied in the VIP section. Chancellor Morden of the Zephyrian Council was already composing messages to his homeworld. The ancient being had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations, but this was something entirely new. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that challenged every assumption about species hierarchy and galactic order. Dr. Hawkins sat in stunned silence, her tablet full of notes that would revolutionize the field of competitive psychology. Sarah hadn't just won through superior technique or training, she had demonstrated that humans possessed a unique neurological response to extreme pressure that actually improved their performance beyond normal biological limits. Implications were staggering. If humans could achieve this level of excellence in athletics, what did that mean for their potential in warfare, exploration, or technological development? The galaxy was about to find out. Admiral Voss made his way down to the court, the tennis ball still clutched in his weathered hands. He had seen this determination before in the battles for Mars, in the defense of Europa Station. In a dozen conflicts where human forces had been outnumbered and outgunned, humans didn't win by being stronger or faster or more advanced. They won by refusing to acknowledge that victory was impossible. "Congratulations, Ambassador," he said as he reached Sarah. "You've just won us more than territory and trade routes. You've won us respect." Sarah nodded, understanding the full weight of what she had accomplished. Around the galaxy, on every human world, people were dancing in the streets while their governments frantically recalculated their strategic positions. The Andromeda approach sectors were now theirs, but more importantly, humanity had proven that they belonged at the table of galactic civilization, in the broadcasting booth. Siktar the Wise found his voice one final time. "Ladies, gentlemen, Beings of all classifications, he announced 2 billions of viewers across dozens of worlds. We have just witnessed the emergence of a new force in galactic affairs. The humans have announced their arrival not through military might or technological superiority, but through the sheer force of will that has carried their species from a single world to the stars themselves. As Sarah walked off the court, tennis racket in hand, she carried with her more than just a victory. She carried the hopes and dreams of an entire species that had spent 2 centuries being told they were too small, too weak, too short-lived to matter in the grand scheme of galactic politics. They had just proved everyone wrong. The universe would never be the same.